Hey, how's it going guys, Chris here, and today we're going to be comparing two of the support classes machine guns in another Battlefield 1 weapons showdown. The first being the Canadian Huot Automatic, which just so happens to be an automatic conversion of the bolt-action Ross rifle, and the other weapon being one that was a lot more common throughout the war, being widely used by Allied forces on the Western Front, the Lewis gun. Both of these weapons function in a fairly similar way, and fit into the same sort of category when it comes to playstyles, with them both being some of the class's slower shooting guns that have other advantages to boost their appeal over the quicker firing ones, and so it makes sense to put the two together side by side to check out exactly how they're both different to each other, and what kind of scenarios they're going to be best suited for in comparison. Because both the Lewis gun and the Huot Automatic might often feel like they're doing the same sort of thing, but they are in fact slightly better than each other in different aspects, which we're going to be running over during this guide. So first things first, let's check out some of the stats, see which weapon is the deadliest, and what this means in terms of gameplay. I can say that as far as overall damage is concerned, both the Huot Automatic and Lewis gun are both going to dish out the same sort of pain and pretty much inflict identical damage figures when landing shots, as both machine guns deal the maximum damage of 26.5 up to 11 meters, which gradually drops down over distance to that minimum damage of 20 beyond 50 meters. So basically, damage is going to drop down by up to 6.5 over range, equating to one less bullet to kill beyond 12 meters. As you can put an opponent down in 4 shots within close quarters, though it'll normally take up to 5 bullets to kill if you're taking on someone at 13 meters and beyond. This also means that because the minimum damage drops down so low at those longer distances, it could potentially take up to 6 rounds to drop another player, unlike a lot of the other support weapons, due to the fact that limb shots and bullets hitting the lower body will produce even lower figures still, dropping that minimum damage down even further, slightly below 20. So unfortunately, not quite enough damage to secure a 5-bullet kill on an enemy with full health. This basically means that neither the Huot or Lewis gun are exactly brilliant weapons for long-ranged engagements, especially when compared to most of the other weapons in the support's arsenal, as in most cases, it's going to take more rounds to kill a long-range target, because let's face it, if you're gunning down someone far away, chances are you're probably going to hit a limb at some point. Both guns might deal the same damage, though one thing that does separate the two weapons slightly and actually increases the Lewis gun's effectiveness when it comes to lethality is the fact that it fires a teeny little bit faster at 480 RPM, so 5 RPM quicker than the Huot Automatic's 475 RPM. Not exactly a deal breaker, but something slightly beneficial nevertheless. This technically gives the Lewis gun a very minor advantage in terms of how dangerous it is, with it having slightly faster kill times over all ranges. Though because it's such a tiny difference, literally only firing about 1% quicker, you could pretty much put the two guns on the same page. Though one thing's for certain, neither of the two weapons are really all that brilliant at killing rapidly, though what they lack in overall lethality, they definitely make up for in other areas, which we'll be going over next. Now the Lewis gun and Huot Automatic aren't exactly two weapons you'd typically pick for blitzing through enemies and wiping them out particularly quickly, though it's the other things they do that makes them viable guns to choose over some of the more dangerous ones, and when it comes to precision, both weapons are generally going to perform quite well. All of the Lewis gun variants have a vertical kick reading of 0.25, one of the lowest values in the support class, which also happens to be a tad lower than the Huot Automatic, with a slightly higher upwards kick value of 0.28. So not too much, but still a little bit more. Because of this low vertical recoil, both weapons, but more specifically the Lewis gun, is going to be a very controllable thing to use, which always comes in handy when firing a fully automatic weapon, and this will probably allow you to suppress enemies and lay down the fire for longer durations before that vertical recoil starts to become a bit of a problem. Though as far as overall accuracy goes, this is where the Huot Automatic tends to shine, as it might have a teeny bit less stability, kicking upwards slightly more, though the gun's horizontal recoil values are in fact lower, quite a lot lower, as the Lewis gun's got a horizontal recoil value of 0.24, or 0.21 for the optical variant, whereas the Huot Automatic's horizontal recoil is set at 0.14 for the low weight variant and 0.12 for its optical, generally making the Huot Automatic about 42% more accurate in comparison, which is a pretty big difference. This isn't the only thing that the Huot does better either, as it's also got a slightly lower first shot recoil multiplier of 1.4 times, which isn't a hell of a lot lower than the Lewis gun's 1.5 times multiplier, but it's still a bit more of an advantage, which is going to help you out when tap firing and shooting in shorter bursts, something that might make it easier for landing shots over longer distances. Lower spread is also another thing that gives the Huot Automatic more of an edge too, as it's got lower values for aiming and shooting while standing still, slightly less spread increase per shot, along with better hipfire accuracy, with hipfire spread being slightly lower, which is always a nice bonus to have, especially if you get caught out in close quarters. Of course, both weapons are almost going to be laser beams when you're using those bipods on the variants that support them. But generally, the Huot Automatic is going to be the more precise weapon of the two, having a much nicer recoil pattern and spread values across the board. This doesn't mean that the Lewis gun is bad when it comes to accuracy, but you're more likely to miss a few bullets than you would with the Huot, especially if your opponent is further away, and this could potentially reflect on those kill times and make them even longer. So there's a few different aspects to take into account when looking at a gun's overall reliability. One of the main things that helps to keep you in the battle, of course, is a weapon's ammo capacity, and in this case, the Lewis gun pretty much wins hands down, with both its low weight and optical variants holding up to 47 rounds at a time, and its suppressive variant being able to carry over twice as many bullets, holding up to 97. So basically, all of the Lewis gun variants hold a reasonable amount of ammo, more than enough to take care of a few enemies easily, and allow you to get yourself out of a sticky situation should you get surrounded by the enemy team. Whereas the Huot Automatic on the other hand has a much smaller ammo capacity, with its magazines only holding up to 26 bullets, more than 80% less to play around with, and this puts a bit more pressure on you to make those shots count. It also might mean that you can't be quite as gung-ho with the Huot Automatic, as you're more likely to get caught out when you're up on the front lines, which might make the Lewis gun seem like a slightly more aggressive option that's better suited for being a bit closer to all the chaos, having more ammunition at your disposal, and therefore giving you a greater chance at surviving against multiple opponents without needing to reload quite as much. The Lewis gun does overheat, but it's not going to start doing so till you've continuously fired about 35 rounds in one go, which is more than the Huot Automatic's overall ammo capacity, making it the better option for not only keeping you in the fight with readily available ammunition, but also for suppressing fire and keeping a steady stream of bullets flowing. And when you're using a bipoded support weapon from a defensive position, having beefier magazines and more bullets to blast out is always going to be a very beneficial thing, complementing the support's role nicely. You're going to be reloading a lot more with the Huot Automatic, and although reload times are almost identical to the Lewis guns, the Huot actually performs its empty reloads a tiny bit slower. Barely enough to make any kind of noticeable difference, as it's literally only a few milliseconds out, but this still technically makes the Lewis gun superior as far as the stats go. And all of these factors clubbed together basically makes the Lewis gun a more versatile option. It's probably going to be better at keeping you alive in more scenarios. So the main question, which should you choose? Both weapons are pretty similar, and both tend to support passive-aggressive playstyles quite well, though there's definitely enough distinction between the two guns to make them feel like separate weapons from one another, with them having their own advantages and disadvantages in certain aspects, which might make one seem better to pick than the other, depending on the user of course. The Huot Automatic is definitely a stronger option for those who prefer a higher degree of accuracy, as although both guns have very similar kill times, with the Lewis gun having a slight edge due to it firing a tad quicker, the Huot Automatic will often be able to land more shots precisely without missing, which could essentially boost the gun's kill times, making it more ideal to use over range. And because it's generally the more accurate weapon of the two, this also means that the Huot can often be an easier weapon for planting headshots with, cutting down those kill times even further. That lower horizontal kick and slightly smaller first shot recoil value is going to allow the Huot to do this more effectively, as you won't need to worry about shots flying off target quite as much when you're taking on someone further away. And you'll also be able to tame that slightly higher vertical kick a bit better by tap and burst firing, helping you to hit players over further distances a little bit easier too. Whereas the Lewis gun might kick a bit more from side to side, potentially causing you to miss more shots in fully automatic fire, but it's generally a more dependable option that functions more of a jack of all trades, overall being a more well-rounded weapon that doesn't really excel in any particular aspect, but tends to do everything to a pretty good standard nevertheless. It's not quite as accurate as the Huot Automatic, but having a much larger ammo capacity can often seem like a better trade-off, as you're not going to be as vulnerable whilst you're running around capping objectives and taking on multiple players one after the other, and the fact that the Lewis gun also has a slightly lower vertical recoil value, which basically makes it easier to control in automatic fire, means that you'll be able to shoot in slightly longer bursts before that vertical kick starts to get in the way, which forces the muzzle upwards and causes more shots to fly over your enemy's head. The Huot's vertical recoil isn't really all that much worse than the Lewis gun's, but it's still another thing that will help to complement the Lewis gun's suppressive capabilities, and make it seem a bit better for laying down the fire, up on the front lines, and in defensive positions too. But generally speaking, the Huot Automatic is the better choice for more defensive playstyles due to it being more precise over distance. It's a great option for picking players off one by one without having to worry about shots flying off target. Though the Lewis gun is going to be the more reliable and perhaps slightly more passive aggressive option, with it being able to sustain fire better, handle with more enemies per reload, and even kill a tiny bit quicker too. So that's it for another Battlefield 1 Weapons Showdown, guys. Hope you enjoyed the video. Thumbs up if you did, and be sure to subscribe if you want to stay updated with loads of other Battlefield 1 and Battlefield 5 videos coming out in the future. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in that next episode.